Third video on converting between fractions, decimals, and percents. Once again, here are the 5 fraction to percent conversions that I want you to have memorized. They're incredibly useful if you do. For our conversions between fractions, decimals, and percents, once again, we want to try to get our fractions into tenths, hundredths, or thousandths. So if I multiply the numerator by 2, I create 1 6/10, which can be written as the decimal 1 6/10. You also can add the 0 behind because 1 6/10 is the same as 1 60/100, which would be the percent, 160%. Now, when we get to decimals like 352 thousandths, converting from the decimal to the percent is a little bit easier than going in reverse because we know that we care about the hundredths column first, so that between the hundredths and thousandths column is where the decimal place will go for our percentage. So we have 32 or 35 2/10%. Now, if we're doing this as a fraction, we know that 352 thousandths is our fraction. And if I do 352 divided by 2, I get 176/500ths. Once again, if I divide by 2, I get 88 2/50ths. And then I get 44 1/25ths. Now, for this problem, it's a little bit harder to do the simplifying part, but as long as you get this fraction right here, you're definitely on the right track. For the next problem, the same idea. We know that we move the decimal place 2 to the left to get back to the decimal of 445 thousandths. That's a 5 right there, which would then be 445 thousandths. Now, this time, we're going to divide the numerator and denominator by 5. So I get 89 200ths. And this time, that's in simplest form. I can't go any further than that. Our last problem is 3 7500ths, which we can write as 3 7500ths. We know that 7500ths is one of the fractions that we're supposed to have memorized, so it's 3 3/4. As a percent, once again, I move that decimal 2 to the right, and I get 375%. Let's convert all of these to percentages, and then write them in order from smallest to greatest. 2.5% is already in the right form. For this one, once again, I want to divide between the hundredths and thousandths column. So I get 42 3/10%. 2/5 is one of the fractions we're supposed to have memorized because 1/5 is 20%. So 2/5 is 40%. And then finally, 4/10 is the same as 40 hundredths, which is the same as 40%. So actually, we have two that are the same for the first time. So if we're writing them in order from smallest to greatest, our smallest is 2.5%. Now our next two are the same. So we got to find some way to show that they're equal. So I'm going to write them on top of each other like this would be fine. There's a lot of different ways you could show that, though. And then our largest is 423 thousandths. So let's go to our story problems today. Dakota was driving his tractor at 20 miles per hour. The speed limit on the road was 25 miles per hour. What percent of the speed limit was he driving? So we want part over total, which in this case would be 20 out of 25. I'm going to multiply both of these numbers by 4 because that gives me 80 out of 100, which is 80%. So Dakota was driving at 80% of the speed limit. Let's see what's next. Lacey was given a brand new bag of marbles. There were 3 colors, red, blue, and yellow. 5 of the marbles were red, 3 were blue, and 7 were yellow. What percent of the marbles were red? So in this case, we have 5 of the marbles were red, and we need to figure out how many total marbles there were, which there were 3 blue and 7 yellow, so that would be 10 others. 5 plus 10 is 15. We can simplify this fraction by dividing by 5, and I get 1/3. 1/3 is one of these fractions to decimals that we were supposed to have memorized, which is 33% about. And so we'll say Lacey, or actually we'll say there were about 33%. Whoops, I wrote about already. Red marbles in the bag. Let's see what the last one is. From question 4, what percent of the marbles were either blue or yellow? So, in this problem, there were 10 that were blue and yellow combined out of 15. And I actually don't have to go too far here because we know that red was about 33%. So the others in the bag, because there's only 2 options, these together have to add to 100%. Well, 10/15 is 2/3, which is about 67%. And these two together do add to 100%. So, blue or yellow marbles were about 67% of the bag. And there we go. Number 3 done. Only 1 left. Let me know if you have any questions.